So, back in 1970, he wrote a titled article for a short-lived magazine called Scanlan's Monthly, and it was called "The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved." This is where gonzo journalism really took hold in suburban society. Became a norm. You would hear it in the coffee houses, and you'd hear it at the coffee tables of suburban housewives. The 70s, he considered his most proactive years of writing. Most of his books were written at that time, and a little over 1,000 articles were written at that time. 1971, a son is born, and it dies a few days after the birth. They don't name that child. His girlfriend Conklin realized, and they had several miscarriages in the process, by the way, but these were live births. And the medical community had no idea what the problem was. Was it defective birth? Was it a defect of the birthing process? They had four. Four. 5 children in total. Only one lived to adulthood, and is still living today. So, as he, remember this guy, Porter Bibb, that I talked about, that he'd met in high school? He becomes editor of, the second editor of probably the most famous magazine at the time, called the Rolling Stone. And that was about 1968. Well, in 1970, Porter said, I want you to come on board and be a permanent staff journalist. Write whatever the hell you want to write. I don't care. We're going to put it in the back page. If you want comments and commentary, if you want to write stories, it's yours. He became a regular contributor to The Nation, to the Atlantic Monthly, and very interestingly enough, he became fast friends with the New England patrician by the name of Plimpton, and began to write reviews for the Paris Review, which was Plimpton's puppy. So, 1970, he writes and does the research for Strange Ramblings in Azalon, which is basically the expose, his first really huge expose in the Stone, for killing American-Mexican television journalist Ruben Salazar. Ruben Salazar was the gentleman in the picture that, why am I losing my mind? Thank you, that Dan Stevens pointed out. Ruben Salazar's son, Ruben Salazar Jr., also became his attorney, lifelong friend. So, 1972, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is published, as well as Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail in 1972. Everybody, well, you probably don't remember, but anybody remember the campaign in 1972? Great campaign between McGovern and Richard Nixon. Landslide victory for Richard Nixon, by the way. And the Vietnam War was coming to a close, and he said, well, now I need to focus not on the war. I need to start focusing in on all of these weird things that are going on in American society. And he became basically a culture commentator on the back page of the Rolling Stone, on top of the exposés that he writes. Now his Fear and Loathing succession, I can read them off. Started with Las Vegas, Campaign Trail, Fear and Loathing in America, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and Other Stories, Fear and Loathing at the Rolling Stone. These are a series of articles put together by publishers. There's also The Blood Sport, The Bush Doctrine. In this time, in the 1970s and 1980s, I'm going to blanket it because so much was going on. And he was also he also found photography in 1982. So he started to really take incredible pictures, and he became fast friends with the glitterati, the actors and actresses of the day. Warren Hinkle, a friend of his that he had met when he was living in San Francisco that first year, who now became editor of the San Francisco Examiner, asked him if he wanted to come on board. So now he's writing for 4 newspapers as a contributing commentator, and expose specialist for the Rolling Stone, and a prolific commentator for 26 magazines worldwide. Amazing amount of work. And he described the 1980s and the 1970s and the 1980s as a blur of Chivas Regal and bad cigarettes. Figure that. He also brings in the Screwjack series, which are a group of short stories. There's about 4 books in that series. I'd suggest everybody read them. They're fun. And then, of course, there's the Gonzo Papers, and there's 7 in that series. All written in the 1970s, 80s, and into the 90s. So, my leg is killing me, and I'm still going to stand. This brings me to the late 1990s, 1998 to be exact. We're in the last legs of the Clinton administration and the new legs of a Republican revival. Now, as you know, his political opinions were mixed. And he really had a great passion for individuals, but he had a great distaste for politics and politicians. And he felt that Clinton was a president that could have brought a great deal of hope, but instead brought a great deal of misery. And he compounds that in 2000 with his doctrine on the Bush-Cheney saga, stating that if Clinton had not had sex in the Oval Office and was not a sexual deviant, there could have been a great deal gained. Same thing that Christopher Hitchens had said. So there's a lot to think about in these times. So he ends up divorcing his wife, and he falls for his assistant. Anita, you're right. Now, they don't marry until 2003. They kept a long, ongoing relationship from 1986 until 2003 when they formalized their marriage. Now, what happened to Jude?
She had to go.
Oh, okay. I was going to have Jude come up here. Well, Sandra Conklin, his first wife, stayed friends with Hunter. And he was always close to his boy. And there was something about Hunter. He didn't want his body to fall apart. And he didn't want to be left to the devices of mankind. And so I'm going to read a little bit about his death. Hunter S. Thompson, doctor, died at Owl Farm, his fortified compound in Woody Creek, Colorado, in the Aspen area, at 5:42 p.m., February 20th, 2005, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. His son Juan and daughter-in-law Jennifer and grandson Will were visiting for the weekend. They were all present. Will and Jennifer were in the next room when they heard the gunshot. They mistook it for a sound of a book falling and didn't check on him immediately. Anita Thompson, who was at the Aspen Club, was on the phone with her husband as he had cocked the gun. According to the Aspen Daily News, he asked her to come home to help him write his ESPN column, and then set the receiver on the counter, mistaking the cocking of the gun for the sound of his typewriter keys. She hung up as it fired. Juan Thompson found his father's body, according to the police report and Anita's cell phone records. He called the sheriff's department a half an hour later, and then walked outside and fired 3 shotgun blasts into the air. Juan told me he had a shotgun into the air to mark the passing of his father. A piece of paper carrying the date February 26, 2005, and the single word, counselor. The great Douglas Brinkley, who is a journalist today, wrote a lot about that event, and this is what he wrote. He had interviewed him. Douglas Brinkley had interviewed Hunter a couple of years before, and this is what Hunter had said to Doug Brinkley. No more games, no more bombs, no more walking, no more fun, no more swimming. 67. That is 17 years past 50, 17 more than I needed or wanted. Boring. I'm always bitchy. No fun for anyone. 67. Are you greedy? Act your old age. Relax. This won't hurt. Bang, bang. His friend Ralph Steadman. Now, Ralph Steadman was one of the guys who has kept him alive today, as well as kept him in the business of writing all of those years. And Ralph Steadman is one of the fellows that he met through Professor John Berryman while he was at Columbia University. Remember who studied under John Berryman? Our great dear Peter J. Duffy. It's amazing how everything really does tie together. So I want to talk about the funeral. August 20th of 2005, a private ceremony was taken. Thompson's ashes were fired from a cannon. This was accompanied by red, white, and blue and green fireworks. all to the tune of Norman Greenbaum's Spirit in the Sky and Bob Dylan's Mr. Tambourine Man. The cannon was placed atop a 153-foot tower, which had the shape of a double-thumbed fist clenched in a peyote button, a symbol originally used in his 1970 campaign for sheriff of Patinkin County. The plans for the monument were initially drawn by Thompson and Stedman, and they were shown as part of an omnibus program on the BBC titled Fear and Loathing in Gonzo Vision in 1978. It included special features and a second disc. I don't want to get into that. But anyways, according to his widow Anita, the funeral was funded by actor Johnny Depp, who was a close friend of Thompson. Depp told the AP, "All I'm doing is trying to make sure his last wish come true. I just wanted to send my pal out the way he wants to go out. God damn it." The famous attendees that attended this thing would astonish you, including at the time U.S. Senator John Forbes Kerry, former U.S. Senator George McGovern, Ed Bradley, Charlie Rose, Jack Nicholson, John Cusack, Bill Murray, Benito del Toro, Sean Penn, Josh Hartnett, Lyle Lovett, Julia Roberts, John Oates, David Amram. There was estimated 280 people at this ceremony in his fortified compound. What's his legacy? His legacy is gonzo journalism, an inflappable persona, an irate political beliefs. I'll give you a quote by another magazine that he wrote for, Vanity Fair. "Thompson's death. The man is now free." Like I said, 58 books, a little over 11,000 letters, one illustrated book, 50,000 photographs, 8 feature films, and a little over 10,000 articles, 2 documentaries, and a goddamn theater production. This is a man who lived life to the fullest. And that's going to conclude our time on Hunter S. Thompson. And I really appreciate you coming. And I'm going to close with thanking the Blueberry Patch for hosting this event, thanking Ink Tank for putting it on, thank you Kurt Thompson for organizing the video and sound, and thank you everybody for coming.